This is Harrison. I don't know. Did I lose? Well, there I'm back.
Welcome. We see you.
All right.
Very good.
Yes, sir, there you are.
Okay, we're now live.
All right, good evening, everyone. I appreciate you joining. My name is Paul Tamburino. I'm chairman of the City of Charleston Citizens Police Advisory Council. And, again, I'd like to welcome everybody here, especially my fellow council members. So it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Let's start with the roll call, if you wouldn't mind, Joe.
Sure. Council member Emily Broom.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, we got you. Council member Eduardo Curry. Council member Ryan Davis. Council member Arian Fernandez. Council member Tuan Fielding. I thought I saw.
She's muted.
She's okay.
She's on, yeah, she's on screen.
Okay, thank you. Council member Doris Grant.
It was on a second ago.
Yeah, she was on the screen.
All right. Okay, Council member Jerome Harris.
Here,
Council member Sarah Mack.
she's on my
I
screen.
can
Thank
see her
you.
on the screen.
Okay, thank you. Council member Harrison McIver.
Here.
Okay. Council member Harold Mullen. Council member George Palmer. Council member Paul Tamburino.
Here.
And I believe Council member Imogene Thomas.
Imogene.
Imogene, yeah, I think she's coming on now. She mentioned that she was gonna be calling herself Tess, and I think she's trying to join, so we'll circle back. And Councilmember Moyo Yamaguchi.
Here.
Okay, thanks. And real quick, Imogene Thomas, are you with us?
That may be who Test is. We need to
I
find
think
that
so,
out.
yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
So does that give us a quorum, Steve? It looks like it does.
Yeah, I count 8,
Mhm.
and that's even without Miss Thomas. So I think we'd have 9 with Miss Thomas.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. We've got a quorum so we can conduct our business. That's great to have. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to first, welcome our newest council members. A little bit of background. There's been a big push, as you all know, to ramp up membership on CPAC and start to, kind of the folks that have done their time and really just don't have the ability to do, to meet as often as we'd like. So several of them have submitted in the past couple months their resignations. Marisol Bailey, Jack Handigan. There was one other one. Jill, do you remember who that was?
Was it Frank Walsh?
Yes, and Frank. They submitted their resignations. We thank them for their time and their service. And then at the last couple of council meetings, I know some new members have been confirmed. So first I want to introduce Harrison McIver III. Harrison, if you'd like to introduce yourself real quick, please.
Good evening. I'm, as he mentioned, Harrison McIver. My wife and I retired from Memphis, Tennessee about a year and a half ago. I'm a Kamya and she's a Benya. So, and we found this community to be a place we wanted to retire and live. We've truly enjoyed it, and I was very active back in Memphis. I'm a retired attorney, very involved in bar associations and other activities in the community and fraternal and religious organizations back there. So coming here, I wanted to get involved in the community in a meaningful way, given that I have a commitment to justice and fairness and equity that the opportunity might present. And through our contacts with the mayor, this opportunity was presented, and it seemed to fit within my values and the things that I would want to see achieved in uplifting this community. Also, coming from Memphis and having a love for Memphis, and have seen over this last year some of the things that have occurred that relate to policing and the like, it really punctuated my belief that the community and relationship with the police department should be a goal that we should all aspire. And coming here and being a part of this group really makes that a reality for me, based upon what I've learned and what I look forward to learning more of. I recently, last night, I was at the training academy and got a great overview of the operations, et cetera, for the Memphis Police Department, and look forward to participating moving forward. I must say, I've been struck, and I just recently stopped looking at CNN, what is going on, and you can imagine I've been affected by what's going on in Nashville, and seeing, coming from Memphis and knowing that young man, not knowing personally, but what he's aspired to do and how he has risen. I just think that this country and and while that's a global, this country, but from a micro sense, we are here in Charleston, and I want to contribute and want us to work together to make this a better place for all of us to live. So thank you.
Thank you, Harrison. And, I'll tell the other members, just Vice Chairman Harris and I met with Harrison last week, and just like what you heard, we've already told him, sounds like we're going to keep you busy. So everybody down here knows I'm a big fan of voluntolding. So, and I think that's kind of how I got my job, is I was voluntold. So we look forward to your participation. I know that one of our, just so everybody knows, Harrison is one of the mayor selections. We also have another mayor selection, Arian Fernandez. I think he was planning on attending. Maybe he wasn't able to connect, but Arian Fernandez is another one of our new council members. We have a new high school representative to join MOU, and his name is Harry Mullen. Harry did tell me that he did have a scheduling conflict tonight, so he is excused from attending, but he was real excited about introducing himself to you all. So I told him he can do that at our next meeting. And then our newest District 9 representative is Imogene Thomas, and she has left. It looks like she's connected now. Imogene, can you come off mute and introduce yourself, please? She was watching through the Zoom, and it looks like she's connected. Can you unmute? If not, I'm not gonna force you to. All right. If she can find her unmute later, we can take a break and let her. There you go. Miss Thomas. All right, she may not have a microphone. That's fine. We'll move forward. Now what we'll do is let me see. So Jill, I know that Marcus McDonald's in the waiting room. Captain McFadden also messaged me with that, and I said go ahead, because we're about to start the citizens participation. So Jill, who do you have lined up for citizens participation, please? Now, let me just say this before we start. We allocate 10 minutes for citizens participation. Each speaker gets 2 minutes, and we're not trying to be rude, but when you get to your 2 minutes, we will ask you to end your comments. So at this point, Jill, if you've got anybody you want to introduce.
So we did have some comments that were submitted via Innovate by Anthony Bryant. I do not believe he's with us tonight, but we can circulate those to the members as part of the information and keep them as part of the minutes.
Right, and I believe he sent a bunch of notes through Word, so we'll include, or through the participation channel, so we'll include those with our minutes. I also received a nice long letter and recap for Suzanne Hardy from Cajun. We'll also include those with our meeting minutes, please.
Okay, will do. And it looks like Mr. McDonald left the waiting room. There is another person with a phone number that we don't recognize. Should I?
Did Mr. McDonald want to speak to us, or he left?
He left and now there's an unidentified phone number in the waiting area, but that's everybody
Okay.
that I can see.
Is there any member of the public on the line that would like to speak to us? Hearing nothing, we'll move forward, and that concludes our citizen participation. So let me just jump into my update. I would tell you it's fairly brief. Just again, like I said last meeting, I'm just continuing on the efforts of, our former chair, Tuan Fielding, who did an amazing job. So I'm still trying to catch up with her. I do want to tell you, I think it's pretty neat for CPAC and for Tuan. The mayor and the city council recognized Councilmember Fielding for her just amazing leadership of CPAC, and they recognized her and made it the Tuan Brockington Fielding Day, which is amazing proclamation by the city. Tuan, did you want to speak on that?
Yes, I just want to say thank you. I was very surprised and quite appreciative for the recognition. But really, as I told the council, it's not by my own doing. It was as a result of the work that we have done for these years. So, and I did also put a plug in, Councilman Harris, our vice chairman will let you know, I put in a huge plug to state the fact that we need them to make sure that the councilmen appoint to this council people who are interested in putting the time in and doing the work. So hopefully with the new members that we received, and welcome aboard, so good to see you all, that you will be as intrigued and as dedicated as we have been, as so we can continue to doing the work that the guidelines have assigned us to do. And again, Chairman Tamburino and the rest of the council, thank you all so very much for ensuring the recognition. And I look forward to continuing to work. Thank you to Paul for letting me speak.
And I'm going to tell you, you're the only one that's surprised by it, because none of us are surprised that you were more than worthy of that recognition. So we're glad that they did that. And it was important to note that besides that, it was also during Women's History Month, which is another big thing. Jerry?
It was fortunate that the council decided to take our recommendation and acknowledge Tuan, but they talked about what service looked like and what it meant to be a council member. So it made it very easy for me to make a comment during public comment that when they get ready to appoint somebody, they need to look at Tuan as a role model. So we got 2 bites at the apple.
That's incredible. So again, thank you, and wonderful recognition. Mr. McDonald, I know we've passed the citizen participation period, but it looks like you probably lost your connection. So I'm going to invite you to address us as you requested. One thing to note is we do limit each person's comments to about 2 minutes. So, the floor is yours, sir.
I didn't have too much to say. I just here urging for more transparency and accountability in regards to the racial bias audit. So I'm just here listening and learning, and I think after this meeting I'll be able to know more and hopefully have some outside discussions with people, and continue pushing this mission forward. Would like to speak with Jill Edison potentially. I'm sorry if I butchered your last name, but some point in the future, and just kind of talk through her vision. And just also, the other members of CPAC's vision with the audit. So that's why I'm here, and I'm looking forward to listening and learning.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for being open to hearing us, right? And I know, Jill's got your contact information and can certainly reach out to you. She also has our contact information, so you're welcome to reach out to any member, all members, whoever you want. I know, a big part of our mission, just so you know, as CPAC is exactly that, is connecting with various members of the community to make sure that not only are we learning, we're also, so it's equal parts learning and education as we move forward through this. So we'll never have all the answers, but we're always striving to be educated to find those alongside members of the community, just like we are. So thank you for joining us. All right. That was really my update. I think as we move forward, we're going to talk about, I'll have some comments on a few of the things that the other speakers have. I know I sent around an invite to some of the community events. I've talked with Captain McFadden and Deputy Chief Walker about the importance of, as different community things, initiatives come up, to make sure that we're made aware in enough time so that we can look at our calendars and participate. That also, I really impart on you that we need to be out in the community. And if we're not having neighborhood meetings and things like that, the more that we can attend these different things, it not only shows the community our respect for them and our willingness to be engaged and be a part of it, but it's also a good sign to our police department to know that, the respect is mutual, that when we engage and we participate, they respect us just a little bit more and are more than, I think it increases their eagerness to work with us, which is really our goal, is to have the police department working with us to help find answers to the questions that folks like Mr. McDonald have. So, I would say those are my updates as general. Again, I'll have comments as we go through the different parts of the agenda.
I have a question, Paul.
Yes, sir.
With respect to those community events, and I learned a lot about that last evening, what's the expectation of CPAC members in attendance?
Our guidelines don't, our guidelines say we should be involved, right? But we don't have any set number. We don't have any set thing. I know in the past, I think one of our challenges of CPAC is probably the same 2, 3, or 4 people would do their best to attend, and we wouldn't get as much participation. So that's why there was a big push to bring
That's
on
really
some
not
members.
I think I didn't state it right. Once we are there, what would be expected of CPAC members in participating, or just to be, well, we are here and we are available. Do we speak? I guess that's another.
I think it depends on the occasion. In some of the events that we're invited to, they're just community wide, just more, there's not a speaker that gets up. There's no central. Sometimes these are just like community events. And what I found is the best thing to do is cycle around and introduce yourself. And once you do, you're going to find that they're going to talk to you. I think it's important to make sure that the police department representatives you see there often become the same people, because that's part of their job. They'll soon recognize you. And when they do, they'll also start introducing you to the different people they know at the various events. So yeah, it's, what I would say is I'm not, like Jerry and I know Twan's been, we'll say hi to each other, but we don't form our little group and stand there on the side. We say hello, touch base, and then we all fan out. All right. Any other questions or comments for my portion? All right. Awesome. The minutes. I know we haven't had minutes in quite a long time because we haven't had a quorum in quite a long time. Jill, did we even have any minutes to approve for this meeting?
No, we did not receive any, given the fact that we didn't have quorum.
Okay, perfect. But the good news is we have quorum for this meeting. So going for, at our next meeting, we'll have minutes to be approved. All right, so let's move forward to, okay, so we have, all right, so one of the things we talked about at our last meeting, and it's been an ongoing issue, is exactly that, being able to get quorum, being able to have CPAC members who are still able to engage and attend our different meetings and participate. And I always know that, when you volunteer, your intentions are always good. Everybody's got great intentions, but life happens. And some people's ability to serve, it diminishes as they take on other responsibilities. It's also very common, especially folks like Jerry and Harrison. I'm sure you're that way. I know Twan and Sarah and Doris, and even Emily. The minute you raise your hand to volunteer for one, your name gets on some kind of list, and they come to ask you to volunteer for every single thing that comes down the pipe. And you guys, your volunteer calendars just start stacking and stacking, and then it becomes a conflict. So what we've really been looking to do is we've got to have participation on here. Our former chair, Fielding, and I used to, when I was vice chair, we used to talk about that a lot. What do? We tried every outreach to members. We communicated to them. We communicated various ways, did everything to encourage. But the sad fact is, it is what it is. And, we have to be able to conduct business. And our subcommittees have been challenged, and some have even diminished and gone away because we didn't have enough participation. So there's been a giant push working with Steve, working directly with the council members, directly with the mayor, and saying, listen, this is what we need. There was an outreach to the members that have not been able to participate. And it was communicated to them that per our guidelines, and I know I sent this around, everybody should have that in their agenda. We do have guidelines for CPAC that says there are terms for removal for somebody who misses 3 or more meetings with as long as the council votes them out. So I reached out to quite a few of those people that have missed 4 or more. I didn't do the 3, 4 or more. I reached out to them and I asked them, do you want to keep participating or not? The 3 that did respond indicated their thanks, and they did resign. And we talked about that at the beginning. The 2 that I haven't heard back from were George Palmer and Eduardo Curry. Great guys, both of them. They've been excellent members of CPAC. So, there's nothing detrimental, but at this point, as a member of CPAC who wants to get business done, I do think we need to be a little bit more forceful in enforcing this standard. Now, if one of you has to be absent and you've called in and you said, listen, I'm traveling, I'm doing this, that's fine. But when we don't hear from you, we don't hear any reason why you're not participating, we're just left to wonder. So we do have that on the agenda. If somebody wants to make a motion, as chair, I don't want to make the motion, but if there's a motion to let's start with George Palmer has missed as of the last meeting 5 consecutive meetings. Is there a motion to remove? Jerry? Okay, so I have Councilmember Harris. Is there a second? Okay, I have Councilmember McIver. Is there any? So we have the motion to remove for absenteeism. The motion was made by Councilmember Harris. It was seconded by Councilmember McIver. Is there any discussion? Jerry, it's your motion. Did you want to speak to it?
So simply, as you indicated, I know George had attended the academy. I think when we went through the academy, George was a participant, but he's not been able to attend meetings. I reached out to him also to try to recruit him to the policy committee, and without a response. So hopefully he's okay, but there's not been communication. So I think that this motion's in order.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Anybody else want to speak to the motion, for or against? Seeing none, I'll bring the motion to a vote. All in favor of removing Councilmember George Palmer from District 6 for absenteeism, either raise your hand, give your thumbs up, or indicate, give your hands up. Okay, Jill, if you would count. If you don't have video, if you just go in and you put the plus on your thing. Okay. And against? If you're against, please hold up your hand, your thumb. Seeing none against, the motion carries. Okay, the second member that we have is Edward. Ms. Grant, did you have something to say?
No.
Okay, you just came off mute. I didn't know. Okay. The next member that we have up for consideration, if there's a motion, would be Eduardo Curry. Also, 5 consecutive absences. This is a mayor's selection. Do we have a motion? Does anybody want to make the motion to remove? Okay.
You guys,
Once.
I'll go ahead and move it.
Okay, so Councilmember Harris makes the motion. Is there a second? Councilmember Mack
Yes.
has seconded. Okay, so the motion has been presented and seconded. Is there any discussion to the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll put the motion to a vote. All in favor of removing Councilmember Eduardo Curry for absenteeism, indicate by your thumbs up. Okay. And thank you. And against, either indicate with your thumbs up now. Okay, seeing no objection, the motion carries. Thank you very much for that. What we'll do is we're now going to forward that information to the various council members to let them know that they have vacancy. We'll also communicate. I will personally communicate to George and Eduardo. Again, just like I did, a few times over the past couple of weeks to let them know that this motion was going to be presented. So the council members know this wasn't blind. They did receive a note telling them that this would be on the agenda. So it was a one-on-one note to them and their council member to let them know that, if they wanted to remain, please let me know, or indicate otherwise. That didn't happen, so this won't be a surprise, but I will communicate formally. With that said, Steve, I know you wanted to give us an update on other membership.
Are we at the guidelines now, or is this a different part of
Yeah,
this?
let's talk about, well, it was a joint thing. I want you to talk about, so the efforts to fill our other vacancies, because we did have other vacancies. I know Peter filled his, or Councilmember Shahid filled his, but I know we had, even before this vote, I think we still had 1 or 2 vacancies.
Right, so we got a nomination from Councilmember Appel. And that person's information will be placed on the city council member's desk on Tuesday at the next meeting. And they get to review that, and then the appointment would be at the following meeting 2 weeks from Tuesday. So that would be Councilmember Appel. And then we have actually 3 other council members. We have Councilmember Boyd, Councilmember Bowden, and Councilmember Waring have open spots. And I believe Jill has identified at least 1 Citizen Academy graduate who was interested in serving on this council, who is from Councilmember Bowden's district. So I believe that person is being considered by him. I'm not quite sure where we're at with the other 2 vacancies. I know the mayor has communicated with those council members, and I a while back had actually sent an email and made a phone call as well. So.
And I also forwarded, I know I forwarded the mayor when he had openings, I forwarded him the resume of a CPAC, of a police academy graduate that also wanted to participate. So I can forward that information to you.
Yeah, and we can make another push after this meeting here today,
Sure.
after, since when we find out what,
Perfect.
where the vacancies are and where we need people. So.
Excellent. I appreciate that. All right. So the main reason, one of the main things Steve wanted to talk to us about today is when the topics came up about our membership and our participation. I believe the mayor advised, and this has been a little while back, they wanted to review some of our CPAC guidelines. You know, our guidelines have not changed since we were formed. And now that we've actually been in service for several years now, I think there were some modifications that wanted to be made. So I'm gonna let Steve, I'm gonna let you talk to those.
Okay, and I sent an email, I think Jill sent an email around with the guidelines and the proposals, but I'm just going to kind of highlight those. And if there's any questions, just let me know. The primary purpose of us looking at the guidelines again was, again, this problem of vacancies and positions, participation, and continuity. And so we wanted to look at the guidelines again to see if there's anything we could change that would, you know, fill those vacancies and get more participation on the council. Another purpose, as long as we were going through the guidelines, we looked to remove some of the obsolete provisions that don't really apply at this point in time to the council. And I'll comment more on that here in a second. And then there had been some substantial work on CPAC's role in reviewing policy and procedure of the police department. And Jill had come up with a flow chart that was discussed, I believe, at the policy subcommittee. And so we've tried to incorporate that process and procedure into the guidelines. So future councils will understand what the procedure is for that and how policies are reviewed by CPAC. So membership is on page 2 and 3 of the current guidelines. We looked at the youth representation and our proposal to council. Again, these are all proposals. These aren't, you know, done deals yet by any means. These are going to go to city council once they're finalized, and the council would have to approve these or, you know, make changes to them as they see fit. But rather than limit it to high school seniors who are only served for a year, we propose to expand it to any high school or college age student who either lives or attends school in the city. I originally had just student, but Jill pointed out to me that one of the police academy people was a 55-year-old guy like I was, who was in college. So that wasn't really representative of the use, but we expanded that to include a larger, you know, all high schoolers and all undergraduate college students. And then, you know, if as long as they're connected to the city, and they can serve the 3-year terms as well, rather than a year. And the reason I thought that would be beneficial is, you know, if you're only serving for a year, by the time you kind of get up to speed on this group, then you're already out the door, and then we were starting all over with someone new. So if you're interested in staying, if you're interested in staying, you can be on there for longer. We changed the wording police 101. We really don't have a police 101. It's the Citizen Police Academy. And we took out ride-alongs, not because we don't want people to do ride-alongs, but it's my understanding that that's part of the Citizen Police Academy program, is the ride-alongs. The pool of potential candidates, we put a provision in there that we will inform council members of graduates of the Citizens Police Academy who express interest in serving on the CPAC. Provide that list to council members and the mayor, and should they choose to choose from that list, that's of course up to them. But I think that would help with the participation, because if you have a person that's expressing interest in being in this group, they're more likely to attend the meetings and do the other things that are required, as opposed to just being asked by someone and coming onto the council. And then I think the most important thing we put in here was, if a council member after 30 days from receiving notice that their appointment has resigned or been removed, or their term is expired, that council member has 30 days to fill that position. And if they don't, then the mayor has the option of filling that position himself. So that way we can take care of some of those vacancies.
Steve,
Yes.
the wording in, well, a couple of things. Going back, how do you want us to respond as we go through it, or how? How would you prefer?
It doesn't matter to me. If you want to stop me, if you have a question, or if you want to wait till the end, it's completely up to you how you want to do that.
Mr. Chair, how do you?
I'm I'm probably more of a fan of doing it as we go through it, just because it's more topical at that point. Steve just given his explanation. And so I think it's probably better that way. Steve, if you don't mind that.
That's fine, however you want to do it.
Yep. Okay. Harrison, go ahead.
Yeah, when I was reading the councilman shall be notified, I was a little confused as I'll just read it. Councilman shall be notified at least 30 days in advance of the expiration of their appointment term, or immediately shall their appointment resign. I don't know, it kind of threw me off. I know what you're trying to say. Maybe I'm just not interpreting it as intended.
Yeah, so I mean,
Is the appointment appointee, you're saying the appointment is a person resigns? Okay. Is it the appointee? Are you saying the appointment resigns or the appointee? That's what kind of threw me.
yeah,
It could be either one of those, because we all have different appointment dates, right? Because for whatever reason, people came off, people came on. So it's not like an election where, okay, we all started on November 1st. And so they all know. So it's really letting them know, because they don't keep up with it. In fact, one of the things that I ran into is I was talking to a couple of the council members about their appointees not participating. And I can tell you that council member didn't even know they had an appointee on CPAC, because they had just recently been elected. And so they weren't able to keep up with all the different council, these little committees that are out there. And so they were just as surprised. They didn't know who their representative was, much less their appointment date.
I guess I'm saying, is it an appointee resign? Can an appointment resign? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Is that
so
person?
when I'm talking about appointments, I'm talking about you all, members.
I know, but I'm
specifically-
just wondering.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the purpose is to make sure that the city council member knows they have a vacancy either coming up or immediately. Like the people that were removed tonight, we need to contact those city council members tomorrow and let them know that that they need to fill those positions.
I'm gonna
I'm
back
not speak
away.
for you, but I think what he's saying is he's not challenging the theory. It's you're using both the word appointee and appointment at the same time when you're really referencing the appointee.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm just saying-
I'll work on that.
Okay.
I'll work on
Thanks,
that.
thanks, Paul, for
Yeah, I think I caught that one, Twan.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for the recognition. Steve, when you were talking about the training that we did, I didn't recall ride-alongs being included in that unless they have changed it and have added ride-alongs. I did my ride-along separately, early on. But have they added ride-alongs now to the training?
Yeah, I asked that question of Laquilla Simmons, who is part of the academy, and
Right.
she indicated that yes, they are part of the program.
Captain
Oh,
McFadden,
okay.
can you speak to that? Because I don't know that was one of the nights of the.
It was not, so pre-COVID, when it first started, and I'm not sure how many sessions they had, I believe it was a requirement. Post-COVID, when we had a lot of transfers, we came in, we had gotten away from that a little bit. And then we have since, starting last year, have kind of made it a requirement again that we ask that all of them participate in the ride-alongs, unless of course there's some, reason why they cannot.
So it is a formal part of the academy now.
Yeah, it's just with all the changes, it was kind of back and forth a little bit, but it is now, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, the notion that the participation in the academy doing the ride along is optional. The notion that I think that we should require that council members participate in the ride along, even though because they cannot opt out of it. So I just think it's important to leave it in. I wouldn't drop it.
I mean,
Councilmember
on our end, everything is kind of voluntary, right? We're not going to force someone to show up to every class. So I agree with Mr. Harris that it might be best that you just keep it in. I'm not gonna, argue with someone and force them to do a ride along. So it might be best to just keep that in your actual guidelines.
I agree, because also, Steve, if you look at the timing of it and know that the timing of the first 6 months, even if they can't get into the class because it's filled or they missed the cutoff, if we could still get, because you don't need to be a graduate of the police academy to go on a ride along. Any citizen can do that. So that way we can separately encourage that for those that can't get in as quick as they should. So I'm also in agreement with keeping the ride along as a separate requirement. Councilmember Grant, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was in the inaugural CPAC class, and the ride along was a requirement to participate as a CPAC member, and it was a separate. We did the police 101, and then the ride along was separate. So I just wanted to add that information.
I have no problem adding that back in. That's not a big deal.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we've got that one resolved. Steve, if you want to continue, please.
Just clarify that the chair and vice chair will serve 1-year terms, and that you can be elected chair or vice chair again. I mean, conceivably you could be the chair or vice chair for 6 years if that's what the committee decides, but the terms would be 1 year.
When's the election? When are they elected? Should that be there? You say they serve 1-year terms, and terms began January 1st, but when are they elected?
Yeah, I think this year we did it in December, didn't we?
Yeah, we do it in our last meeting. Yeah, we do it in the last meeting, and it just says when the term starts.
Yeah, I think
I can clarify that though. I can put that in there.
Yeah, I think so. That makes sense.
Okay.
Steve, put the final meeting of the calendar year, because we never know whether, sometimes it could be November, it could be December, right? Based on timing. So just put the last scheduled meeting of the year.
I will make that change. We had in here about the facilitator, and those of you who have been on from the beginning remember that Reverend Middleton was our facilitator for a number of meetings in the beginning, and I think that was just kind of to get us off the ground. But then he moved on to other things, and we don't have a facilitator. But I don't know that we need one. I think that you all can facilitate yourselves at this point. So we took that language out of there. I put the Public Safety Committee as the, I'm sorry, Councilmember Harris, you want to?
Yeah, the question of the support for the facilitation, if you look at the things that the facilitator was supposed to do, it involved some training and some other activity. And it was not simply a question of helping to put together the agenda. I'm wondering, and that function is currently, well, as it evolved, it became the job responsibility of the Director for Procedural Justice. So if we're going to continue that, I think it's important for that to be noted, that specify the role of the Director of Procedural Justice, defined as it relates to the CPAC. I think that would strengthen that.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry. At my time on here, we didn't, the Reverend wasn't there. We had Wendy, served in that role pretty much. We had, of course, we had about a year where we didn't have anybody. And then Jill came on board, and I would say she is our facilitator. I mean, I think that role is important to us to have. And it's more of I think it's a facilitator. It's a liaison also. I think that role, as long as they continue to have, Jill's position, that role, but we should have it codified somewhere that, let's say hypothetically 2 years down the road, they eliminate that role. We still would like to have some type of intermediary like that.
Okay.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know where this fits, but I read through it. I can't pinpoint, But in the subcommittee work, the support that subcommittee might have is falls on the subcommittee members to maintain the notes and maintain the minutes.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. What we're getting to is what you're going to see in the next section that he talks about is where we have a clerk, a city clerk, who actually takes the minutes. Now, in our subcommittees, the committee chair takes their own minutes and submits them. So it's a little bit more administrative. Our CPAC meetings are typically more, there's a lot more people. There's a lot more to keep track of. So it's always good to have a third party who's not participating in the discussions, who's taking notes the whole time. The facilitator role that like what Jill's doing is more of not only between meetings, during meetings she has specific reports, but between meetings, she's kind of our, sheep herder sometimes, whatever you want to call it, but helps us with our agenda, helps us get the notes moving. As a communicator, she'll express to us, the different people in the police department will do that. Captain McFadden she communicates what she wants with us. You'll see a lot of communications from Captain Cretella. Deputy Chief Walker's very good about it. But Jill's role is really, and I like the fact that she's a civilian. So that kind of is that little bit of a buffer. That's my perspective. I think it's been very useful.
So to that point, because you chaired the communications committee, and because I chaired the policy committee, and because nobody chaired the traffic stops committee, so that level of activity, some of the getting to information, that kind of role, not so much the note taking, but some of the getting to information that might be necessary. I think that is part of the role of the director of procedural justice, as it has evolved, replacing the facilitator. So I think there is a interface there and a part of the support necessary for the success of those committees. May not be the note taking, but just who in the department is doing what in the area of traffic stops, for example. You've got Captain Bruder who's doing things. You've got other officers that are involved, and Jillian will know who those people are and can connect those to the subcommittee. So I think that's an important linkage to help us.
Steve, what I would recommend that you do is keep the section of facilitator. And, I don't know if you want to specifically reference director of procedural justice, because again, that position may go away. So somehow you can word that, because we do need that conduit. I think that's, not as a mentor. I don't think we need as a mentor.
Yeah, when I'm thinking about it, I probably would take out the facilitator and say that the police department will provide a liaison to the committee.
Jill?
Or to the council.
Yeah, so there is some language in the current document that says the chief of police or his designee.
Right.
And there's other references to the designee of the chief of police. So I don't know if expanding, that reference to these other areas of facilitation might be adequate, but just wanted to point that out.
I would just use that, copy that language just in the facilitator type role, that the chief or his designee, right? It's just something that mentions that we do want that type of liaison. We don't need them necessarily for mentoring, but it is good at having that person that knows who we should talk to. And we can't put that burden on Captain McFadden or Captain Cretella. I just think that's putting one burden on an individual like that. But however you want to word it, I just think we all agree that some type of wording should be there.
All right.
All right. Next.
I referenced the Public Safety Committee, CPAC, to communicate recommendation, concerns, interest, and activities to the Public Safety Committee. Of course, those would be then reported out to the full council. I just think that's probably the best conduit to get your recommendations and concerns and things before the council.
Which section are you at, Steve?
So Public Safety Committee, it's in that same section where the facilitator and clerk of
Okay,
council
I'm
is,
sorry.
page 3.
Yep, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So Steve, you left yourself out of this. We don't,
What's that?
it's not a reference to our legal counsel.
Well, but let's go backwards, because where it says the city shall also provide an assistant clerk of council to us for our main meetings, right?
Oh,
From
yeah.
what I'm told, we don't have one today.
Well, they do the minutes from the recording is what they do, is my
Okay,
understanding. So they will do the minutes, for you based on the recording.
Okay, it's a record from the recording. Okay, that's fine. All right, keep going.
All
please.
right, so then we are on page 4 under meetings. I just put in a definition of quorum. We didn't have that before. In Robert's rules, it's a majority. But I also clarified that vacant seats would not count towards the quorum, because we had a question as to that. And that way, if there was a vacant seat, that wouldn't hinder you, by having that person counted as part of the numbers of active members. Removal on page 5, I just kind of moved the language around there, but I also put in the 30-day requirement for replacement before the mayor gets to step in and make his replacement. And then we put in, like I said, the flow chart that we had talked about in the policy subcommittee as an appendix to the guidelines, which is the process for providing comments, suggestions, and recommendations regarding policy and procedure.
Okay.
And that's basically the changes I had. And then you had also provided us with a list of suggestions, which we can go over at this point in time if you want.
Yeah, if you don't mind, please.
Sure. Do you have them there in front of you? Otherwise, I'll pull them up.
I do, but I can't share my screen.
Okay, let me pull it up here. See if I can share a screen. Can you all see that?
It's coming up. Yep, there it is.
Okay, so procedurally, I talked with Julia Copeland, who's a corporation counsel, as to how this would work. And my understanding is you all would vote on these. And if CPAC as a whole wanted to recommend these to the mayor, then I would take them to the mayor, and we would look to incorporate them if that's what he wanted to do. And
Okay, so why don't we do this? So Jerry, I know you submitted these recommendations. So since this is our recommendations, you want to lead this part of the discussion, please? Do we still have Jerry?
I'm sorry,
Jerry,
my signal was fading out. So these recommendations came from various conversations that I've heard us go in and out on. The first one, the requirement of CPAC to present to City Council, and it's in this case, Steve has put in the Public Safety Committee an annual report on activities and recommendations, just to make sure that we have an annual report and that we don't have to just do it annually, but more frequently. And we had previously talked about the chair making that kind of a presentation. So it should be in the guidelines.
Yeah, the reason why we're putting that, so everybody knows, is I guess, I don't know, if Councilmember Fielding felt this while she was chair, but unless we proactively really push ourselves back to the city council, they're really not reaching back out to us for feedback or anything else. And this will be that formal communication to ensure that information flow is happening. You want to read to the second one, Jerry?
Well, let me jump down
We
to
talked
number
about that.
5.
Yeah, we
number
put that
five
one on
talks about
there.
CPAC members meeting with their appointing authority twice a year. Again, one of the recommendations that we had made or requests that we had made was for there to be regular communication between the appointing authority, the city council member, the mayor, and the appointees. That's something we had discussed. I just want to put it out there as a guideline or suggestion.
Right. And it's just so, especially for our new council members, we've really pushed. This isn't anything new. We've really pushed. I know under council members Fielding, when she was chair, really pushed us to make sure that we were calling, writing, emailing, and giving updates on a regular basis to make sure our council members knew what we were doing. And I think we just want to codify that a little bit more. Jerry, you missed number 3, reference to GOs, which outline the roles
No,
of CPAC.
I specifically went to 5 because I wanted to link 1 and 5 together.
Okay.
All right.
All right, go ahead.
Excuse me, Chairman Tamburino.
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chairman
Yes, ma'am.
Harris. I had a question about number 5. How will we be able to verify that? And do we want to say twice a year or at minimum twice a year?
It should be minimum. And what we should do is if we put required to, I don't know if the words meet or connect, because sometimes it's an email back and forth, sometimes it's a Zoom, phone calls.
Mhm.
So maybe
Right.
connect. And then
Communicate.
if we have that in our guidelines, I think what we do, because remember, guidelines are that high level requirement. Then we get into the working rules that say, okay, copy the chair on your communication, or give us a summary. If you've had a phone call, when you're done with that connection, send a summary of that communication back to CPAC so we can record that, with our official, words of, any feedback that we're getting from either of them, right? So that we know it was done, we're getting feedback, and we can make that part of our business. Would you agree?
That is a way to do it. Some time ago, pre-COVID, we used to go around the table. We were meeting in person, and we would go around the table, and each person would say whatever they wanted to provide in respects to their district or to their appointment. Maybe you can consider adding like a good and welfare or for the good of the order on the agenda maybe, and those who have communicated and want to share something can share it at that time as well. That's just another option.
I have
I think council. Go ahead.
I have a
There's a-
question. Given this is election season is coming upon us for the mayor's position, would it access to him? Would that be, and Steve maybe can speak to that, would we be able to meet with the mayor, since I'm appointed with the mayor, can that be facilitated, or would that be a challenge?
No, I think
Well,
that can be
I can
facilitated.
tell you as a civilian, he's pretty, you're going to find he's pretty open to meeting with us. In fact, if we invited him, in most cases, if we invited him to come to this meeting, I don't want to invite him to come to every one of them just because I know he's busy. But if we had something on the agenda for him, he's always been,
Okay.
pretty open,
just want-
and he'll, they're all, I'll give him that, I think that's fair to the mayor that he is open,
That's good.
and very
Yeah, my-
accessible to it.
In my experience, Harrison, since I'm a mayoral appointment, all I had to do is ask for the meeting and he puts it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not a mayoral appointment. He's, and I was just regular Joe, and he was willing to meet with me about a concern. So he's pretty good about that. So council members, if any of you ever need, if it's speaking to the chief's normally on our calls without, we don't need a special invite for him. He's always on our calls. But if there's anybody you want to hear from, by all means, before the agenda goes out, give me at least enough notice so I can facilitate that. but I found that everybody, Harrison, I'm a transplant like you, and I've got to tell you, these are government members here, whichever side of the political spectrum you're on, they're pretty good about being accessible. I will give them that. So as long as we're polite enough to give them notice and we don't conflict, and we try and Steve keeps us, does the best he can to keep our meetings from conflicting with city council meetings, so that if that ever came up, we know that's not happening. All right, Jerry? Did you want to continue on your list?
Sure. Number 3, reference. I think that may have been accomplished by the language, the insertion of the flow chart. But I had not seen that document. I mean, the proposal that was circulated yesterday when I sent in these bullets. 4 rather, referencing the role of CPAC in monitoring the police department's progress in implementing the racial bias audit and recommendations from subsequent assessments. When the guidelines were originally written, the racial bias audit had not been completed. And subsequently, the department, in describing the role of how community engagement is being done, specifically references CPAC. And I just thought either as an example, but just to highlight in this period, the role of CPAC as relates to racial bias audit and other subsequent assessments might be appropriate.
All right. Is there any,
And
go ahead, Jerry.
6 was yours. Number 6 was
Okay.
yours.
So number 6 is an interesting one. So when we had an opening, one of the council members reached out to me about just asked me my opinion about an appointee. I would have never offered my opinion if he didn't ask, right? But he reached out to me and asked me, and he wanted to appoint a member, and he is nominating the person, very good person. But my first reaction was I knew that person didn't work or reside in his district. And so I was going to write him back saying, well, I don't know if that person's going to be qualified. I went back and read the guidelines, and it said that there's no restriction of a council member to appoint from their own district. And that started to bother me. I understand, maybe, certain limitations, but I'm going to editorialize a little bit why it bothered me. Realistically, and I know this won't happen, but realistically, and nothing against folks on Daniel Island, but this entire group could be residents of Daniel Island. It doesn't necessarily reflect, or everybody could be resident from, District 1 or District 5. And the whole purpose of this was to have a cross-section of the entire community. And my opinion, nothing against any individual council member, I'll say this about any elected official. If you can't find one person in your district, maybe you're not communicating enough with your district and you're not in tune with, those needs happening in your district. So that's my editorial. I'm not saying that as chair. I'm saying that as just a regular Joe who, when I look at that, it's nothing against anybody for suggesting it. It just, that personally bothered me. I like it being somebody who can come to this meeting and talk about how did you communicate with the people in Johns Island, right? If that's your district, and this person I'm not speaking that specifically, but how could you communicate to that if you live in, North Charleston, or you live in, somewhere else? That was my opinion on that recommendation. Does anybody have any comments about that, for or against? Right now, just so you all know, right now it can be any council member can pick anybody from, as long as you work or reside in the city of Flint. So it's just like the mayor selection. It could be an at-large from wherever. All right.
Mr. Chair, I did have that thought. I mean, if we wanted that specific language, and the reason I left that out, just so you know, is because of some of the issues we were having with vacancies and participation and continuity. that if you have someone that's as engaged as you are on this call here today, and you just happen to be outside the district and you're struggling to find someone within the district, I would rather have you or Mr. Harris or Ms. Fielding appointed than just someone that is not going to show up. So
What I would say to you, Steve, you kind of solved that with your recommendation. If they've got 30 days, then it goes to the mayor, and the mayor's a free for all. And they've ceded their ability to have, I mean, I don't agree with it. I cannot imagine a council member not knowing his people well enough to pull one person. But if they're turning over their, I mean, I can't ever imagine ceding my own ability to the mayor, no matter who the mayor is. But if they're willing to do that, that's on them. That's their leadership, right? So I think you've built that in. Sarah, I know you've got your hand up.
On mute.
You're on mute, ma'am.
I'm in agreement with the wording on number 6, because I've come up with, since I've been on the east side, where you have people that doesn't reside within the district and they're on different councils. So I think it is important that we leave the wording the way it is.
For number 6, because the reason why we're proposing that, it's not currently in the guidelines. These are recommendations to add that language. Currently, they can be anywhere within the city.
Mhm.
Well, I would prefer for them to be within the district of the councilman.
Perfect. Councilmember McIver.
I concur. I think it's good language, and you do provide an opportunity if a person owns a business, which has he or she has some investment in the council person's district. So I support it. I think it's a good idea.
And some of our business owners in that district, they're more vocal than the residents sometimes. Depends on where you are, right? All right. So Jerry, you wrote those up. If you want to make that as a motion now, guys, what we're doing, just so I can kind of explain what we're doing, is the mayor's office. We obviously do not write our own guidelines. So let me stop. Councilmember Fielding.
Thank you, Chairman Tamburino. My question is about item number 2. We skipped that one. And my question on that one is the 6 months of appointment. Are we certain that the cycle for the Citizens Academy will be within 6 months of an appointment, given the times that we're appointed?
I think my opinion would be if we know that they've, we obviously are somewhat loose in enforcing a lot of what we do, but at least to know that they've applied. I know with the recent appointee, people that have been appointed to the council, that was part of the communication going to them as they were being brought in. And when I got the information about each one of our new members, it was indicated to me from, when their packet came through, they've applied for, they've enrolled in. And when there was a waiting list, I think, how can we move them? Can we move them towards the top of the waiting list? So I think by knowing that going into it, it's helping to establish because I had a couple of council members ask me, what are the requirements? And if I can send them the guideline, just like new members, having that in our guidelines, the 6 months, it just shows a sense of urgency. Hey, get on the list and do it. We know if they can't get in, the class is already full. They've applied. They'll be in the next class. I think we're good.
Okay. I just wanted to make certain, since it appears that we are trying to button down some of the language that's in the guidelines right now. And as you stated, we have been kind of fluid only because the council has not been in existence 10 years yet. So we're really working to see the success of the guidelines that were proposed that initiated the council. And I was only concerned about 6 months to ensure that, in fact, that training is going to be offered every 6 months or twice a year on some regular frequency that would ensure that a council member would not be negatively casted upon.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
we're
about if we
pretty
change this-
steady with our April and September. We've kind of nailed down those dates pretty well. So April and May is our spring, and then September and October would be our fall. So just 2 classes a year. But ideally, it's not full, usually until about a month going into the class. So we can certainly get them in if they
Perfect.
didn't get into one of them. Yeah.
Okay.
How about if we change
perfect.
the language
Thank
to
you.
all members to apply to complete? So they've turned in their application within the first 6 months. Would you think that would be a better wording?
Yeah. I think that would.
Okay, so let's change that to all members should complete their application to the Citizens Police Academy within 6 months. And then if they're not accepted until the next class, we know they've applied. Mo, you.
I just wanted to ask about the age requirement for the ride-alongs, since we're opening up the high school representative like spot to like any high schooler and post high school like college student. I read like 14 in some places, but 17 in others. So I just wanted to confirm that everyone would be eligible to participate in a ride-along
So
if
we,
they're
um,
appointed.
Yeah, we just
Captain McFadden?
require the guardian's permission, so that permission slip, and we can certainly, we've had under 18 a lot recently too. So just as long as there's permission from the guardian.
Okay, thank you.
So
Perfect. Any
can
other
I make the
discussions on that?
motion?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that with the suggested language changes, that items 1 through 6 be recommended to the mayor for inclusion or consideration in amending the guidelines.
All right. Do we have a second?
Chairman Tamburino, Twan Fielding seconds.
All right. All right. So we have a motion to accept the a motion and a second to accept the recommendations for revisions to the CPAC guidelines to the mayor and city council. Is there any further discussion for or against the motion?
I think it was with the amended language too, Chairman Tamburino.
Yes, I'm sorry, as
Right,
amended.
with the amended language.
Okay, so the motion as amended has been presented and seconded. Is there any discussion for or against the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the amended recommendations being submitted to the mayor and city council, indicate with your thumbs up. Okay. Thank you very much. All opposed? I think people's hands are still up, so give me a second. Okay. All right, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
So Paul,
Yes,
one other thing, Mayo raised a question about the age. And I'm just wondering whether or not 21 is a lot of folks take more than 5 years or 4 years to get through a college education. Could we make that 25? That gives us a little bit more space on the upper end.
what do the rest of you think? I think, from my perspective, I think that almost opens the door for people to go older and older and older. And then we kind of miss out on the contributions of Councilmember, Yamaguchi, who came in younger than our guidelines, but nobody said anything because you know what, she's probably one of our best members. So, and I know she sat next to me at the police academy. She's, if you want to look for a model, Mo, you go stand next to Councilmember Fielding because you're a role model for a lot of people, not just people your age, but my age, right? What participation is all about. For those of you that don't know, Mo, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I will for a second. For those of you that don't know, when we attended the police academy, it was amazing. It was even during COVID. Her mom dropped her off at every meeting, and I think she actually sat in her car for a lot of the meetings, waiting for us to be done, patiently waiting. And Mo, you attended every meeting and, was engaged. And, I've got to tell you, that's a role model for me. because I know I felt guilty if I wasn't going to show up. So, it kind of changed, and I'll tell you, Jerry, it kind of changed my opinion somewhat because, I looked at, well, they're too young and, they're in high school and what's the contribution? I mean, that was my initial thought when I first joined CPAC. And the representation, not only did Councilmember Yamaguchi attend the police academy, in the middle, I mean, I'm telling you, in the middle of COVID, there was a UN coalition from Africa that came to the city of Charleston and wanted to meet with different civic groups. And I think CPAC was one of the only ones that was actually in progress. And she and I went and we met with an amazing group from Africa that was in a UN program. And she was the first one to volunteer to go. So, Jerry, I'm open to it, but my opinion is, I like keeping it somewhat on the younger edge, but I'm fine with 25 too. I'm going to open it up to the floor. What do all of y'all think? Because we'll need to reopen your motion to amend it, or that's actually new.
Well,
That's a new one.
if nobody else is interested, I just want to raise it. If nobody else is interested, I'm fine, leaving it 21, just raise it.
Well, and Chairman Tamburino, before Councilmember Yamaguchi joined us, we had a council member who was a high school student that was very active. And matter of fact, as a result of his activity on the inaugural council, he asked the mayor if the mayor would allow him to be one of his appointees as a college student. So I do believe there is much value with having younger members, high school students on the council because of the sheer involvement that they have in their communities. And I'm not talking about where they live, but their communities of their peers. And so we were able to capitalize a lot on what they were thinking from their age group and their familiarity with many of the things that we were talking about at the time. So I would really support us putting an age of maybe 15 or 16, whatever it is for a junior in high school these days, because we were looking at having more than just a senior, because a senior is just 1 year. And like you said in the beginning, by the time that one person gets acclimated, it's time to fall off the committee.
So Steve, I think you've had that in your language already, that on the young end, I think there's a discussion on the high end. I mean, that's your change to make on your recommendations. If you want to talk that through with the mayor, I think we're all okay, whether it stayed 21 or if it went to 25. So, I mean, guys, I think if you talk him through that, we're happy with either decision, but something to think about.
Yeah, just so you know, I mean, the low end is any high school student. So conceivably you could be a freshman and be on this. The 21 was just kind of arbitrary because, like I said, Jill pointed out, you could have a 55-year-old college freshman. So we wanted to make sure it stayed in the younger crowd, for that appointment. So.
Okay, we're good with that. All right. So next what I'm going to do is take a break in the agenda. I'm going to use my privilege. One of our newer members has joined the call, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce Arian Fernandez and give him it looks like he's wandering through the hallway. So I'm going to give him an opportunity to walk and talk at the same time to see how qualified he is to be on here. Arian? You got to come off mute. The sausage fingers aren't finding the unmute. Jill, can you unmute him?
Oh, I apologize about that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I was traveling. I just got back, so I apologize for being late. My name is Arian Juanito Fernandez, and the only thing I can say is just I'm very excited to be part of it, and thank you for having me.
You want to give them a couple lines about your background and how you came to us?
Yes, sir. I'm a member of the Latino Advisory Committee with Mayor Tecklenburg. I've been helping there since 2020. And I used to work at the College of Charleston. And now I'm working for CBE, his IT solutions company here in Latson. And I live downtown in Charleston. And I'm an immigrant originally from Argentina. And I lived a little bit in Colorado, and I've been in this area since 2014.
That's awesome. What part of Argentina are you from?
It's a city called Cordoba. It's I would say dead center in the country, and it's not as humid as here, so that took a little bit to get used to it.
That's great. Well, welcome aboard. We look forward to not only your attendance, but your active participation. Same as everybody else. We don't want you just to be a face on a phone call. We want energy and participation, enthusiasm. So like all members, what I'm going to do is probably take a month or so and see, once we get kind of a full load of new members, we're going to rejuvenate our existing subcommittees, and we're going to bring to life one of them that died, and we're going to bring back a couple more that I think it's really important. We have, and I know it's at the end, but there's a couple of pieces of our guidelines we've really not had the participation to get involved in everything. And a couple of those, one is community policing, and the other one is the complaint process, the police department complaint process. We speak to them as a general CPAC in passing, but those really should also be subcommittees that are strictly focused on doing that. So once we get our full complement of our members, who all have promised to be active, and and I'm not saying you've got to participate every week, but active, I want to really step those up and get involved in those. So, Aaron, just you got your walking shoes on, be ready. We can all that work. Appreciate that. Okay, so next, I'm going to turn it over to Captain McFadden for the community engagement.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay, I'm just going to start with some very specific items. This is covering the past 2 months. I'll go specific and then I'll kind of go broad. So some very specific items that our outreach officers were engaged in. So we've continued with presenting at the senior citizen centers. The Waring Center was traffic safety tips and information on common violations. And we've started doing presentations on getting to know your patrol team and who they can contact in their patrol team. So we kind of just started that at the Low Country Senior Center. We've continued with our anti-bullying basketball games against the high schools. We played one today against Burke. We are 0-2, and they are wiping us on the court. But again, we usually have a message, a time to speak at the beginning of those games regarding anti-bullying. We took some of our scholars from the Gathering Center, our center in Gadsden Green, in February. We got some free tickets to Charlestown Landing, took them out. We like to reward our scholars who show up on a frequent basis after school, the ones that we help with schoolwork. So we like to reward them, and we've taken them over to the Citadel football game. Paul, you've kind of hosted us with that. We've taken them to a basketball game, and then we just brought them over to Charlestown Landing. We had a setup at Seawee, engaged many people. Even a lot of people were interested in our harm reduction kits that include Narcan, so we gave out some of those. We attended the HBCU finale at Sanders Clyde Elementary. That's Lieutenant Mitchell down in the bottom right photo. She attended Benedict College, and she's very active in some of the HBCU presentations. We participated in Operation Neighborhood Cleanup in Ardmore. And then we've started doing a lot of frequent events in our Bridgeview neighborhood. Historically has had a lot of violent crime. So as kids come off the school bus and meet their guardian, we like to sometimes pull up the grill, and that way we can have really good engagement with not only the youth, but also adding in their guardian. Then we also fed the homeless and had a sock drive at 705 King Street, and participated in the career fair at Patterson's Academy. Attended the Burke High School College and Career Symposium. That's your bottom left picture. And then obviously we did our women's build, raised some funds for Habitat for Humanity. That's your very distorted top right photo. One of us almost got knocked out by a tree, but we all survived. And we've started doing that every year. That's a really good, fun internal engagement piece for us. And then we started some Easter events and gave out some bicycles yesterday. The city does a lot of Easter events that we participate in and help with. So some of our reoccurring programs, I talked about pharmacy last 2 months ago, but for those who are new, we have a program called Pharmacy, in which we partner with Charleston Mental Health and Low Country Food Bank. So every Wednesday, we, the officers, they go and they pick up food from Low Country Food Bank up in North Charleston. And then we typically go to areas where the neighborhood, our citizens or people of the neighborhood might not be able to have access to fresh fruits and veggies, and we hand those out. Frequently, we've been going to Mall Park and Joseph Floyd Manor. And then we're working on our officers kind of adopting families. We have one officer who found a family that he actually drives the food to them every week as well. And we're also working on planning a health awareness event in the future, kind of in the works with Charleston County Mental Health and also other vendors. And we do have a couple, the police department has 2 small buses. So our plan is to probably pick up some people that can't travel to our event and help them get to that event. So that's look out for that in the future. That's in the works. We're still actively engaged with Serve and Connect. They actually applied for the Project Safe Neighborhoods grant with our support in an effort to assist us with some community engagement programs down here. And we assisted with Super Saturday, that's sponsored by the Hope Center. And that's where the Hope Center passes out a lot of resources and information for those in need, and specifically some of our homeless population. So we continue attending the chaplaincy breakfast once a month and do some fellowship there. And we are working to incorporate and develop a new outreach center or a mentorship center in Waters at West Ashley Complex. That's formerly Orleans Gardens in West Ashley. Historically, there has been violent crime there as well. So we've been communicating with the management, trying to get a new community center kind of up and running, not necessarily run by the police like our other 2, but we're trying to get some partnerships going with that and get management to give us a little bit of space over there as well. So we are still engaged with our youth mentorship program that we start at CE Williams North. That's every Monday, and it's usually discussion and sports engagement during their a period between like lunch and recess. Of course, we started our Police Citizens Academy last night. Mr. Harrison McIver and Miss Imogene Thomas, your new CPAC members, they were with us last night. And of course, that will run through the end of May. We have a very active, engaged group, so we're pretty excited to proceed with them. And then the partnership project, we planned an Island Estates community cleanup. We had some meetings. We had to cancel it due to weather, unfortunately. So we're trying to replan that, and then a community engagement event over there in Island Estates. Still open our centers twice a week as well. Oh, I forgot to add in. So we're starting a new initiative, kind of a week-long youth Citizens Academy. So we've started planning for that. So hope to get that kind of up and running over the summer. Non-fatal overdose outreach. So under the COSUP grant, which I previously discussed, we were able, this year, we've got our orders in for 564 kits, which includes Narcan gloves, fentanyl strips, CPR face mask, and then information for local recovery and rehab services. So we have distributed more than half of those to our Charleston County agencies. Remember, the grant encompasses, our project coordinator works with Charleston County agencies throughout the entire county. So we distributed those, and those are to be given to people within our communities. Shelby's doing a great job bringing in other agencies. She's recently got Folly Beach on board, and some other fire departments like St. John's within the county to partner with us for providing resources for non-fatal overdoses. And she's also going to be doing some pop-ups in locations to provide information. We have one planned later this month at 180 Place. And moving on, just upcoming, River Dogs are going to host us for National Night Out again. And then also we will be doing another East Side community event. They'll be hosting us in the community, so that'll probably be late summer as well. We have our second movie night this Saturday on Savage Road. I sent you guys the flyer. And that, of course, is a free family event, safe atmosphere. hosted by us. The officers have been working tirelessly to make sure it goes off without any issues. The only issue we're looking at now is it might rain. So the rain out date would be on the 15th. I believe that's next Saturday. And then we have our Bridgeview Community Engagement and Resource event next week on April 13th. That's during these kids' spring break. So they'll be out, which is why it's kind of in the middle of the day. And let's see, we have some more upcoming events. I'll push those out. May 6th, St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church is doing a partnership project kind of family event. And then one of my officers is planning a multi-agency family-friendly beach event for May 13th. We're still in the permitting process with Folly Beach, but their public safety is heavily involved, and that's going to be a lot of also water safety, and have some vendors out there on the beach as well. And then of course, Camp Hope, we are working diligently to get that scheduled out, coordinated, and obviously funded. So those are kind of, I think that's it. Yep. Those are all of my updates for you all.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Captain McFadden? The one thing, Captain McFadden, I think may not have been on your list, but council members, I've sent it to you. We received an invitation from Deputy Chief Walker to attend Rock the Block. I know it's somewhat short notice, but those are the type of events we really, I love going to those. It's on April 18th at Bridgeview Village Apartment Complex. If you didn't receive it, let me know afterwards and I'll forward it back to you.
It's the 13th.
All the details about that. Go ahead, Christy.
It's the 13th. So it
13th,
is,
am I reading wrong?
yeah, it's a weekday and the kids are
13th.
out from school. So it's understandable if you can't make it because it is during their spring break, but it is the 13th. Yes.
You make it great.
Councilman, I'll say Paul, I don't want to mess up your name.
It's easy. It's either that way, like first names.
Okay. I want to commend Captain McFadden. I really learned a lot last evening at the training academy. So I just want to give a shout out to her and her team.
Thank you.
You're pretty sharp for a Citadel graduate.
Smarter than I look. Thank you, though.
Yeah, she does a great job with that. Yeah, it's wonderful. And with regard to the police academy, I will say that Captain McFadden has been very gracious to invite, the chair, and I'm going to bring Jerry, my partner in crime, when I was in the police academy, to the police academy graduation, so we can talk to them a little bit about what CPAC is and what we do. I think that's a great incorporation to us, an introduction. And not only is it a recruiting tool, but it's also letting these people who are vested in this information. We may not have enough roles for council members, but when you make these subcommittees and different things, you're not limited to just having council members on there. If you want to incorporate people from other citizens on your subcommittees, by all means. These are working groups that we want you to have as much availability as possible. So that's a great opportunity to meet people that are vested in those topics. So I think that's wonderful. So thank you for Captain McFadden for not only your update, but for inviting us to the graduation. Okay, I want to move on to Councilmember Grant, this is the portion of the agenda where we talk about the subcommittees. Right now, the policies and procedures is the pretty active subcommittee communications where, I'm going to appoint another chair soon, and they'll take over the web meetings. But Subcommittee Chair Grant, if you would like to talk about policies and procedures, please.
Good afternoon. Regarding updates, GO update, general order updates, Captain Patella provided us with the 2023 review schedule. And he also said that we have two general orders from 2022 that we need to complete. And I need a correction. I need to make a correction. One of those is GO 72, lethal weapons, and general order 29, which I have in the notes, is juvenile operation, but it's actually constitutional issues. So that's a correction to that. And I'm sure that everyone got the notes. Maybe the new members have not gotten the meeting notes from our March 7th meeting. So I'm not sure if I need to go through everything in the notes to make sure that folks have an idea of what we covered, or I can just offer the notes as information to the full CPAC.
Why don't you give the, if you wouldn't mind, if there's highlights, especially as it relates to the motion you're gonna make?
Okay. Well, pretty much the primary information discussed at that meeting was the proposed review process. And we are proposing that the policy review process as outlined through our Justice Director be approved to be incorporated in the CPAC policies. And that would just give us a way that we can have a process in place that just now this current subcommittee can follow, the future subcommittee can follow. And that's something that Steve alluded to in his proposed information to the guidelines. So we extensively covered what that process would look like, who the players in that process would be. And I think it would be a good tool to help this committee, subcommittee to move forward in responsibility that we have in reviewing general orders of the police department.
Do you want to, if you don't mind, Doris, do you have the ability to, you have your process flow up that you can share your screen?
I do not have it out. Jill, would you be able to?
Jill, could you put that up for us? And
Yeah, let me
Councilmember
grab
Grant
it.
walk
Let
us
me-
through that?
Sure, let me see if I can grab it. Give me 1 second.
Chairman Tamburino, I have a question for Councilmember Grant.
Yes, ma'am.
I did read the policy process, the review process that's included. Is that the one too that includes the additional dates that Captain Cotella had talked to us about? I wasn't at the last meeting, but the meeting before that. Does that include that as well?
I'm not sure what dates you're talking about.
He was saying, the order of review, because remember, we had an issue where we got a document. They sent us a document. We reviewed it, but the document that they actually modified and circulated within the police department was a newer revision than what was shared with us. So does this process eliminate that from happening?
It does.
Okay,
It
that
does.
was my only
Actually-
question I had when I read it. Thank you.
Yes, actually, what Captain Crutella did for the most recently general order that we reviewed, General Order 40, juvenile operations, he provided the original general order and a copy of the original general order, as well as a copy of the proposed. So we were able to compare both policies and make our comments.
Thank
So,
you very much.
I think this process will alleviate, those concerns that we had prior to this. And also the subcommittee also develop a process of collecting comments so that our comments are collected as one official document and then forwarded to the police department. So that is helping the process as well.
Councilmember Grant, this is Lieutenant Bailey. I'm filling in for Captain Crutella tonight. And I just wanted to touch on that, as in the last policy that CPAC reviewed was, as you mentioned, the juvenile operations policy. And the feedback from that process of improvement on y'all's end of receiving one document with all the changes. It was very efficient. It was easy to understand. It was easy to relate the recommendation from y'all to where exactly in policy y'all were referring to. So I just wanted to provide that feedback to you. And that general order, well, the next step is to go through our CPD process, and then y'all will receive the the finished product. And as you mentioned, General Order 25, less lethal and lethal weapons will be the next one y'all get. And Captain Cretella will send that to you next week.
Okay.
And just one one point on this process flow is the policy subcommittee, due to the timing that this needs to all happen, we don't always have time as a CPAC to be a collective to keep meeting every time these comments are forwarded. So, and because they're strictly comments and recommendations, the policy subcommittee, based on this process, is empowered to collect those comments on behalf of CPAC and submit those directly to the department. Councilmember Grant, did you want to speak to this further? Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I asked that the folks, CPAC committee approve the policy review process as part of the process for collecting reviews and comments for general orders, as we are invited to by the police department.
Thank you. Because it comes from a committee, it does not need a second. So would anybody like to speak in favor or against the motion to accept these guidelines as a recommendation to the city council? Hearing none, I'm going to put the motion up for a vote. All in favor of passing these? Yes, sir.
Paul, as the past chair of the policy subcommittee, I definitely endorse this. One question, once our comments are passed on, is there any feedback that comes back to CPAC, the policy committee, formally or informally, before it goes to final?
And Thomas, I can
Councilmember
speak to
Grant,
that.
do you want to speak to that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Jerry?
Yeah, after the comments go after the 14 days, the comments go to the department. Is there any feedback back to the policy subcommittee or as relates to the department's reactions?
Jill, I heard you chiming in. Can you finish your conversation regarding that? Because I think you have information.
Yes, ma'am. So yes, we made sure to discuss this with Captain Cretella, and yes, so he will be sending back the final version of the policy that is adopted, and then he's happy to discuss any reactions to the suggestions on the following subcommittee meeting to report back to the committee on what was and was not accepted.
Thank you.
I think what he, Captain Cretella, well, we discussed in our last meeting was that in addition to the policy subcommittee being made aware of what changes were enacted, that would happen before the public posting would be. Am I not correct, Jill?
I am not sure if that, I believe that they would post it and then inform the committee of their
Right. I think
rationale.
if not before, I think it would coincide that we would receive it.
It
at
would
the
be,
same
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
think one of the challenges we ran into is because each one of these goes through a different, they don't have a specific approval process. Some of these could be, they all end with the chief or sometimes with the city council. So there were times where, we were looking for a uniform, and for those that don't know, the policy subcommittee had a very robust meeting with the chief to go over this specifically with the recommendations. And I think that once we've submitted our comments, there's other groups that are also turning in comments and recommendations. They're going to take all that under advisement, and then they come up with a final policy. Now, that policy approval is any number of different ways. There was no, Jill, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no singular, this is the approval process. Once it moved forward, it could be the chief, it could be a committee and then the chief, it could be any number of ways. So I think that's where it ended with, it moves towards a final approval. We'll find out the results of it. Then we can meet with the chief or Captain Cretella to get feedback on why, maybe our recommendations were not incorporated or why certain changes we didn't recommend were put into place. Is that correct?
Yeah, my understanding is I know they're concerned about making sure that they can enact policies quickly. So yes, they would approve once they have their final version following, considering CPAC's comments, they would implement the policy, they'd post it. And my understanding is that's when CPAC would receive, or specifically the subcommittee would receive the formal policy that would be sent to you. And then at the subsequent subcommittee policy subcommittee meeting, that's when any discussion regarding what was and was not accepted would happen.
What I would recommend is in that process, the policy subcommittee should review the final. And then, you all can put together your commentary as part of a committee. And then if you want to bring that to CPAC as general for our formal, hey, we see the policy you enacted. We're disappointed that and we can make it part of our minutes and our record, our public record, that maybe we weren't in agreement with what the final policy was, or we may have formal comments on the final policy that either can come from the subcommittee, or, if you want to bring that Councilmember Grant to the general CPAC, that could be part of our minutes. Okay, so.
So are we going to add that language to the process?
I'm not making a motion to amend it, so that's not coming from me. So hearing it, was anybody offering an amendment? If not, I'm going to move on the motion.
May I offer an amendment to update the recommendation to include your language?
We'll have to write that out. So we can make that part of our subcommittee rules, because remember, that's not something that the city has to do. That's something that we're doing internally, right? So I don't think their policies, their procedure is not going to change beyond this. What I was speaking to was what we do internally once that final policy has been published. So I don't know that it's up to you, but I don't know that we need to amend our language for this.
Well, just to capture it as information so it could be documented. I'm just wondering how we're going to follow through with that if we don't capture it as part of the process.
My recommendation would be to do the motion on the department's procedure that we have outlined here, and then make a secondary motion as to what we have the policy subcommittee do, so that our process is independent of theirs.
Okay, all right.
Anybody else? Councilmember Fielding?
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to find the raise hand feature. Could we add it to, if we scroll down, Jillian, would you please scroll down? Could we add it into the narrative description of CPAC components of process so that it would be captured?
We can make number 7. I'm okay with that. If this is the policy subcommittee's recommendation. So Councilmember Grant, if you want to add that, you're more than welcome to.
Okay. We'll add that to the narrative portion. Thank you, Councilman Fields.
So would that read something like, following the issuance of the policy by the department, that the policy subcommittee will make a report to the CPAC of any concerns? Is that what we're saying?
Correct. That was my language, right? That's what my recommendation was. Councilmember Grant, is that what the policy subcommittee would like to do?
Yes.
Okay. So Jill, if you could, when you capture this as part of our motion, so we're going to amend this document a little. So the motion still stands. We just amended the policy to include number 7, that after final disbursement of the policy from the police department, the CPAC Policy and Procedure Subcommittee will review the final policy and determine if further feedback towards the department or towards our notes is required.
Okay. And let me just ask Steve a question. So that would have to go back through because we're adding to the document that legal already reviewed. We'd have to make sure legal was accepting of that amend or that addition. Am
Yeah, I
wrong?
mean, we take that as a recommendation to this
Yeah.
policy, but that would have to
Right.
go through the process, so.
Yeah.
That's just our recommendation, is just to add that. It's,
Yeah.
you know, and, you know, when you do that, that's strictly our internal. It's not anything that would change their policy. So we have the motion on the table with that number 7. So that's part of our motion from the policy subcommittee. There's no need for a second. I want to go ahead and put that, just, you know, we've discussed that. All in favor, please indicate with a thumbs up. All right, thank you. All opposed? Thumbs up. All right, the motion carries. Thank you very much, Councilmember Grant. That's the only subcommittee report that I have on the agenda for today.
I also
I do-
have an
I'm sorry, go ahead.
additional information. The subcommittee, policy subcommittee would also like to provide the 2022 policies that the subcommittee reviewed. That table is included in our subcommittee information, our subcommittee meeting notes. So we just like to document the work we did regarding reviews and comments submitted during 2022 in relations to general policies, and that would be GO 29, 13, 17, and 49.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for Councilmember Grant? Thank you. Now, I didn't mean to skip over the procedural justice director and the racial bias audit. Those are very important and critical to what we do. I knew with members needing to drop, we had one motion that I did need a quorum for to get that forward. So I apologize for going out of order. Jill, I know you're going to do the racial bias audit and update, as well as Captain McFadden. You guys have the Division of Labor. So Jill, I'll kick it off to you, and you can sheep herd that one.
Sure, no worries. So for the benefit of our new members, it's lovely to meet you all, excited to work with you. I'll just give a very brief overview because that kind of orients the discussion of the third-party oversight update. So in 2019, the Charleston Police Department, with the support of City Council, engaged in a voluntary racial bias audit of its operations. They contracted an outside firm to come in and review policies, practice, procedures, and data. And that process yielded 72 different recommendations applied to the areas of traffic stops, use of force, complaints, community relationships, and personnel issues. And so since 2019, the department's really been trying to implement these recommendations. And at this stage, one of those recommendations was canceled. 33 are noted as full compliance, 37 are noted as full compliance with an annual review. And so by compliance, we mean we've implemented the recommendation. And the final recommendation that we're working on now, which leads me to the second part of my update, is the in progress evaluation of the audit, which is basically an assessment of how well the department enacted those recommendations. And so I can offer the update that since our last meeting, City Council approved the proposal that the police department was inclined to accept from a research group, or basically researchers that are working together to perform this assessment. The contract has been signed and the work has begun. Right now, we are beginning the fidelity assessment portion, which is basically the researchers getting documentation and data and meeting with department employees to ascertain their perspectives and, they get their feedback and review on a formal basis how well the department has really fulfilled these compliant recommendations. The next part of the process, this is a multi-component process. We're going to be working towards getting started on the community engagement piece. I can report that as a result of some of the feedback that we received going through the City Council process, the researchers are interested in working to onboard a community engagement consultant, someone who has a diverse background, who has really strong ties with the community, to try to advise on, the best way to get the community engaged in the subsequent parts of the audit, which include attending public forums, participating in interviews, and then also participating in the joint effort between CPAC and the CPD on the community perception survey. So that's the really important piece that I want to alert everyone about. Given the aggressive timeline for this assessment, we will be likely before our next full meeting. I'll be reaching out to each of the members, you all here, to get your feedback on the survey as we're developing it. And we'll make some time. I'll make myself available probably virtually or in person to get feedback from you all about how the survey looks, how the questions read, and any ideas you have about how to make our dissemination of that survey successful. And so that's kind of where we are with things. One other thing I'll mention is that the department will be giving a presentation before the Public Safety Committee on April 10th, which is next Monday, to discuss disparity and give some updates on some of the data that we're looking at. And this is an evolving process. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're excited about it and we're committed to the work and making sure that the assessment is facilitated properly and that we really continue to engage in doing the best we can to move this work forward. Paul, I think you're muted.
Oh, I did it too. One of the concerns I'm getting from the public, whether it's the media, public in general, some of the different groups around the community, is they feel like they're, and this isn't aimed at you, but they feel like they're not proactively being communicated. So, you know, outside of CPAC, are you all sending press releases? Are you inviting the media to talk to these things in the different groups? Because, you know, everybody just seems to all of a sudden be turning dust saying, what's going on with the audit? What's going on with audit? And, you know, obviously we meet every couple of months and we do our part and we have other work to do. As you're going through this, and I think that's probably why there's a recommendation for a communications guru. But, you know, at the same time, the department has a public affairs officer and different things like that. So I don't know that we necessarily need to wait till you formally hire somebody. You've got people that should be doing that now, is my perspective. Councilmember Mack. So you want to unmute her?
I have a concern here because I dealt with the meetings with the racial bias audit that we requested. And I'm trying to figure out what took so long to get to where you are now, because this started a couple of years ago.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. That's a good point. So it took a long time for the department to basically enact all of the recommendations. Some of the recommendations were, you know, relatively quick fixes. It was basically adding specific lines into policy. So those were relatively less arduous to accomplish. However, some of the recommendations had to do with changing the way that the department collects data. And I know one recommendation in particular relied upon an outside system, and changes had to be made to that system that were not entirely within the department's control. Other processes included making sure that we brought in different trainings and performed those. So, you know, since 2000, and then there was COVID, of course, that I think had an impact on the speed at which some of these recommendations could be put into place. So it did, you know, there's been a lot of work that's been performed and it had to happen in stages. Some of the recommendations built on others. And so that's one of the reasons why whenever you enact large scale change within an organization, specifically related to data and training, it does take longer than we would like sometimes.
So do you have somebody that you're collaborating with at CAJM?
Well, we have been meeting with CAJM. Yes, ma'am. Yes, we met with them prior to our final address at City Council. And I presume that we're still, you know, going to be meeting with them in the future. And we're also, one other thing that I forgot to mention, I neglected to mention, was also based on the feedback that we received from City Council and those discussions. The researchers are planning to host a community kickoff meeting. We're aiming for the end of April. And so people within certain groups in the community that have been expressed interest in this audit and want to provide feedback will be invited to engage directly with the researchers. They're still kind of figuring out when they can offer that and what the forum will be. But yes, there will be a future opportunity to be able to speak directly with them and share concerns.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question. And Paul, you're muted again.
Sorry about that. With relation, I'm making it part of the minutes. I received feedback from Cajun, I think within the past day, regarding some of the meetings they've had. I believe 2 meetings with the chief recently and different people. And Suzanne Harding's expressed some optimism. I mean, she's never going to be 100%, but she's expressed some optimism that there seems to be, at least they're listening, right? And that's probably the positive sign. I know there's the event at the end of the month, so read that report from her and those notes. I think that gives us a good indication. We introduced them to Jill, obviously, to have a sit down with her, and I think from what I'm understanding is that's been very beneficial. So at least it's addressing their need to be heard, right? That's the first step. We didn't have that before, and I think that's helping. Jerry's very involved with what they're doing as well. And Jerry, he's not going to take no for an answer. So he's helping push that along. So I appreciate that. And we're not letting it go. Once Suzanne got my name, I'm getting emails and phone calls left and right, whatever we can do to help them. And they're, and for the other counselors, they're just one of the players. They are not the only player. They're not our only source of input. We want to continue to make sure we have broad input from all the various groups. All right. Jill, anything else on the BOS audit update?
No, sir. I can certainly keep providing those as we continue to work on it.
Jerry.
So Jillian, the contract, the proposal presented to City Council had a kind of a 12 to 15 week schedule of activity. And as I recall the details of the point in which the only item where CPAC was specifically identified as playing a role was the survey. Or has there been any rethinking of that? Or are there any other activities that CPAC needs to be prepared to assist the department with in executing this evaluation?
That's a great point. I think that it really I think helping us get people to attend the public forums when those locations, times, and dates are announced would be very helpful. Obviously, the survey is a big part of the process. We would really hope that you all would help us get expand the interest in that and encourage people to participate. Beyond that, I know that there is an interview portion. We don't have a list of the people that will be interviewed, but community stakeholders. And so I would imagine that representatives from CPAC would be invited to participate in that process. And we'd be very grateful if you could help us with that.
I think we would like to encourage you. We can't tell you anything, but we'd like to encourage you to introduce that team to us as early in the process as possible, so that, we can, if they want our feedback as they go through it, we just encourage that, they don't wait till the survey period, let them know who we are from the beginning, from the outset, what our role is, and then invite them to speak with us at the beginning. So it can be, even if we can be collaborative, we know it's their job to do the audit, but these are people that have been engaged all the way through. So the earlier we can be, involved, the better. I think that also lends to a lot more transparency, even the optics of transparency. I think that would help. Any other comments or questions to that? Captain McFadden, did you want to jump in?
Sure. So the survey, obviously, when I moved from operations to community-oriented policing, part of the strategic plan was that community survey, and that's where we hadn't quite developed. So that's kind of been a few years in the making now, and so I am real excited to have software for this and to get it going and to. My original objective was to not make this a 15-minute survey so that we actually get people to respond to it. And I know it might have gained a little bit of length, but I'm hopeful that we can get this out. And the real purpose behind it. So every community in our city has different challenges. And if we can identify those, specifically our patrol commanders and the officers working those areas would be more in tune with obviously what their residents or people who even work in the city, what fear they have, or what they need to be educated on of the actual crime that's occurring versus maybe the fear of what's happening, and obviously improve on those relationships. So I'm very hopeful and ready to get that off the ground. And thank you, Jill. She came in and, put her educated spin on that as well, and interested to see kind of what the final survey looks like after everyone has their input.
Thank you. Jill, since you're new to this, you haven't heard me, but I'm a broken record. If that survey is not translated into Spanish, I'm going to be pretty upset. That's probably the most underrepresented community we have. I think that they definitely need to have a lot of this stuff, translated for their benefit too. So that's one that's I really want to push to make sure we do that. Any questions or comments for Captain McFadden? All right, I know we've kind of gone a little bit over. I see the chief isn't on here. He must be away. Does he have a representative, or Captain McFadden, are you his representative today?
I can be. I know DC Walker is traveling from Columbia, but I'm sure the chief would be grateful that all of you are on here. I apologize for that puppy in the back. And thank you to all of our new members as well. And I'll leave it at that since the dog's talking to me.
All right, thank you guys. Does anybody have anything new they want to bring up? Anything?
So
they want to bring up?
I'm sorry, Paul.
Yes.
I just want to be clear. Your comment regarding engaging CPAC in the early stages of this process, the evaluation process, and Jillian's comment that there is a meeting being planned for community meeting being planned for late April. Should we have a conversation of some kind amongst CPAC and the staff, Jillian, or somebody, just to kind of walk through what the 12 to 15 week schedule is, and where we can be interject ourselves or be involved and engaged. So the new members of the committee, of the council, as well as the old members, can figure out what additional help we can be.
Jill, do you have let me expand on that. So Jill, do you all for their 15 weeks, is there a project plan, roadmap, something like that indicates, okay, during this, that kind of outlines from kickoff all the way to final summary, the different pieces? And is that something public? Well, it doesn't have to be 100% public, because we are a committee of the city council. Is that something that we can review, so that as CPAC, we can review that and offer our recommendations on, we'd like to participate in this piece. We'd like to participate. If we don't know what they're doing in their timeline, we can't make those recommendations.
So there
Jerry,
is.
is that pretty?
Yeah.
Does that sum it up, Jerry?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm trying to be in a space where the department has started the project and try to make sure that whatever contribution we can make in terms of making it successful fits into that timeline.
Okay, yeah.
If we know their
and-
project plan, I think that helps.
Yeah, so there is a rough outline of activities, and obviously I think it, kind of unfolds in the manner that it was described in the proposal. The first stage is getting documentation from the department, and I know that a lot of the community activities, the researchers were hesitant to really fully plan those out until they onboarded the community engagement liaison, that they're still, actively, looking to make a choice in that regard very soon. But I can certainly check with them and see if they're comfortable releasing their outline and then having a meeting. I know that they've allotted certain time based on the resources that they have available to them, but I'll certainly convey that message and see what we can do.
So let me clarify, they're not going to do their formal they're doing discovery right now, but they're not doing their formal kickoff until they've hired, or they've
Correct.
brought in
They want to bring that person in to help advise.
Have they given you all their drop dead timeline to do that? What if it takes them 6 months? Are they waiting 6 months to start?
Well, they're hoping that they don't have to. I know that they're actively really trying to onboard someone quickly, but ideally, you're right. If it takes 6 months, they're going to have to plan plan something. But I think they're still early enough into the process that they can get someone on to help guide them and still make the timeline or not be very much beyond the timeline.
Right, okay, because I mean, since it's their recommendation, the city probably should have gone back to them and given them, hey, we'll give you a month, 2 months, whatever. This is, this is the maximum amount of time. If you're not able to do it by then, we've got contract engagements that need to happen, timelines, costs and everything else associated. So the sooner we can get that, the better. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I know that they're rapidly working, and this was an aggressive timeline already, and so we're definitely trying to make that happen. But yeah, we do think that, if we can onboard someone quickly, that we can get that expertise and make sure that that's incorporated before too much is planned.
Jerry, can I ask you to do me a favor and be the liaison between you and Jill on that, and you follow up on that subject with her?
Sure.
All right. I love voluntolding. And obviously you can reach out to anybody you want, but if I don't want her to have to do everything through me, and then I'm just forwarding stuff around. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns you want to bring up? I apologize for going over. But I think it was very productive. I'm happy to have not only am I happy to have the new folks, I'm happy to see them engaged. I think that's wonderful. And I'm always appreciative of our longstanding members who've just been, great in how they act. All right. Hearing no questions, comments, or concerns. It is 9:11 your time. It is 6:11 my time. I'm calling in from Las Vegas. How you doing? Thank you all for coming. I needed the break. It's too much walking. Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful evening. And again, our work doesn't stop when we adjourn. Keep communicating, keep engaging, keep pushing, and keep understanding. And thank you all. We're adjourning at 9:11. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.